You're listening to the Swap Society podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Robertson. I interview thought leaders and change makers who are working to create a more sustainable and equitable world through fashion, art, and activism. Join us for a dose of climate optimism as we envision a brighter future. Hey everyone, welcome to the Swap Society podcast. Today I'm talking with my friend Monique Figueiredo. She's the founder of Compostable LA. Hey Mo, welcome to the show.
Hey, hello Nicole.
Okay, so first things first, where are you talking to us from today and where are you from originally?
I'm talking to you from Mar Vista, California, in Los Angeles. Love this tiny little community. And I'm originally from Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is also a friggin' amazing community. So I'm really lucky to have a lot of good neighbors, a lot of good community vibes. Yeah.
Love it. So good. So tell us, how did you get into composting and eventually founding a composting business?
Yeah. So it's funny. It's not a grand story. And I think that's actually the best story because that means anybody can kind of bump into composting. So when I moved in with a roommate in Boston and he was touring me around the apartment and he was basically like, well, we compost here. And that was it. That was the grand story. And so I didn't grow up composting. I didn't start composting until I was 27. When this roommate was like, if you live here, you compost. That's the compost bucket, and that's that. And I was like, cool. All right, done. And then I just got in the habit of composting and couldn't stop. Yeah, it was just like it just made so much sense. So it was as simple as someone just pointing out that that's what we do.
That's awesome. And tell us about Compostable LA. How does it work? What area do you serve, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So back in Boston where this roommate had introduced me to composting, we had a lot of duplexes with shared backyards. And it was pretty easy actually to compost in your backyard. But when I moved to LA, it was a bit more tricky. There was more big apartment complexes. There was no yard. And so I wanted a pickup service. And that's what Compostable LA is. We come to your house, we pick up your food scraps, and we bring them to partner urban farms within the city of LA. And so we focus really on keeping food scraps, which we see as a resource for agriculture, hyper local. And as a result, we've expanded past just pickup. Now we do how can we get you to compost at home? So we don't even need a pickup service. How can we get your events to compost, or maybe production sets, or can we help maintain your composting system? So it's kind of exploded out from there.
That's so exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been actually really natural. Just like, people asking like, well, I don't need the pickup service, but I do need this. And it was just in alignment with my vision of this being like a resource for people who want an alternative means to major waste hauling. And so everything that's kind of evolved was just somebody, for a community member, being like, I'm kind of interested in you coming to my wedding to compost or something like that.
So here in LA, we have those green bins, which are for compostable waste, but I bet a lot of people aren't always following the instructions for what you can and can't put in there. Do you find that a lot, do you know even, I mean, are a lot of people, throwing stuff in there that they shouldn't be, and then they find your service, or is it more of just like...
Yeah. So for the longest time, green bins were only for yard waste. It really wasn't for food scraps. And actually, that's still the case for most of Los Angeles. A new law rolled out in all of California called SB 1383 that's mandating composting, which is awesome. So eventually, those green bins will be able to take food scraps, but you'll get a notice on your door when your green bin is ready for food scraps. Right now, in many areas, it's just yard waste. And even then, yeah, I find that sometimes major systems have a big problem with contamination. It's pretty well known in the waste industry that the United States in particular struggles with high levels of contamination in these bins. We've noticed actually pretty low contamination in community composting systems, which is what I'm considered, because there's a lot more touch points, right? I'm engaging with my members, I'm talking with them, I'm creating a social media following, I have newsletters, I hold events. So there's a lot more communication between the members and my company or any kind of community compost company that helps for proper sorting and cleaner material, which leads to a higher end product, which is the finished product of compost, which you can use in your gardens. So yeah, I would say there is a trend for higher levels of contamination in those bigger municipal bins than maybe community composting systems.
It sounds like you also used to home compost at your apartment in
Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah.
What are tips that you have for someone that has been thinking about composting but hasn't quite gotten over the mental hurdle of
Yeah.
doing it?
I would say don't do it alone. There's no reason you have to. Anybody who loves composting is so ready to share their knowledge with you. And so, I mean, I understand if you're an introvert and maybe engaging with people is slightly draining. Maybe you're going to use YouTube videos a little bit more, which is great. But there's also so many community resources out there to help you not take on this kind of big thing alone. It's like learning how to thrift, right? That's really overwhelming for some people. They go in, there's clothes everywhere. They don't know how to go through the racks, and so it's like going with your pal that really knows how to thrift makes it more of a fun experience. And so the same is true for composting. There's going to be initial hurdles that first month. It's going to be bumpy. You're going to mess up, I guarantee it. And so don't get discouraged. It's all part of the process. It's humbling, but once you have it honed in, it's really, really easy.
So there are all different types of composting. Can you break that down for us? Like, there's you have worm
Mm-hmm.
bins and you have,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, just regular bins. I don't know.
Yeah,
Tell us.
yeah. Man, so there's a lot of great infographics online that's like, I want to start composting, and then they're like flow charts. Like, do you want to compost in your backyard? Yes, and it takes you to these different options, and you'll find there's like 25 different ways to compost. And so really you can find a way that works best for you. I would say for people living in small apartments, usually what's recommended is vermicomposting or worm composting, because they can be done in these kind of upright towers and kind of tucked into a corner. And then for people with yards, you can do something as simple as just burying your food scraps, or you can create these bin systems like you said, and those can hold active composting, which is usually called hot composting, or passive composting, which is called cold composting. And all of these have pluses and minuses, maybe how quickly the scraps break down, the quality of the end product that you get. But I think the moral of the story is there's so many different ways that you can play around with. Maybe the first thing that you do is use a drop-off service or a pickup service just so you get used to sorting. And then once you get comfortable sorting, maybe the next thing you do is start something in your backyard. And so there's kind of ways to gradually level up over time with composting.
I was just talking on a recent episode with Jonathan Levy. Do you know Jonathan,
Oh,
Zero Waste Guy?
him. Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. I really love Jonathan. He's super down to earth.
Yeah.
He gets it. He really gets it. Yeah, that's great.
So we were also talking about SB 1383 and just all of the opportunities that it kind of brings, because, it is using legislation to force these changes. And because the reality is that a lot of people just won't do it if they don't have to, meaning businesses and local governments and that sort of thing. But food waste is a pretty big problem. Can you talk about that? Just our country's just massive food waste problem.
Yeah. The problem is not the food waste. The problem is, like food waste is actually like a really powerful climate solution if we make compost out of it. The problem is the way we engage with food. So, buying food that's traveled hundreds of thousands of miles to be here only to forget to eat it, to compost it, it's even not great. Because there were so many resources that went into growing that product, shipping that product, and getting it into your household. So yes, composting it is a better option than landfilling it. But even at that point, you wasted a lot of resources. So really, like, buying less, planning out your meals. And so the things that you're composting really only are food scraps, that, like, those banana peels that we're not going to consume, instead of whole apples or carrots or something like that died in your fridge. Um, and so yeah, I say, as I'm thinking about my fridge, I'm like,
Oh,
oh.
I do it all the time. I try to be better, but it's inevitable. You
It's
buy some
hard.
things and you don't get to it in time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
do you know the carrot trick? You've got to know the
Um,
carrot trick,
I
right?
think I do, right? You put it in water and it
Yeah,
crispens up again.
it
Yeah,
does.
yeah,
It
yeah,
really
yeah,
works. You
yeah,
can have a carrot that's just like
yeah,
super floppy and not totally spoiled. I mean, that's
yeah,
too far, but just
yeah.
like got
Soft.
kind of soft in the fridge.
Yeah.
You stick it in I just grab a mason jar and stick them in there, and then you put them in the fridge, and then they just perk right back up. It's
Yep.
amazing.
Yeah. And on this topic, if that carrot was to make its way in a landfill, they've actually done this thing called the Tucson Garbage Project, where they dug up landfills and there was perfectly preserved carrots in there from 10 years ago. So you can see they're still orange in the middle, and they were next to a newspaper dated 10 years ago. And what that tells you is that our organics are not breaking down in a landfill. They're creating methane. But if we focus just on diverting from landfills, we're actually missing the real beauty of soil. And so what I like to tell people is that composting is both a verb and a noun. So the act of composting is the diversion part, right? Getting things out of a landfill and recycling it. But the noun of compost, the finished product, is the soil part. And so we want to be able to really look at both parts of the composting world, because applying finished compost to the ground, I mean, it becomes a carbon sink. It makes more nutrient dense food. It holds 5 times its weight in water. It helps cure erosion. So there's all these beautiful benefits when we look at the holistic picture of not only diversion, but also soil creation and soil healing. So that's another little light I like to shine on the composting world.
That's a really great way to think about it, and it made me think about this notion, or just this sad fact rather, that we only have about 50 harvests left,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So this is why I get so focused on the noun of composting, because I think people naturally connect to the verb, right? We need to divert from landfills. We need to divert from landfills. Okay, people get that. But what people are not really as connected with is healthy soil and what's happening there. So desertification is, a third of our farmable land across the globe has desertified, meaning it can no longer grow edible food. And that's because of our current agricultural practices that were brought across the globe due to colonialism. So just like another point against colonialism, as if we needed another one. Um,
Another checkbox.
check. Yeah, right. So, if we start implementing indigenous practices and using agricultural practices that are very specific to the types of area that we are growing in, we can heal these dead soils. So really, one of the best analogies I've ever heard is that soil is geology plus biology. So it's rocks, it's clay, it's sand, it's silt, the geology of it, but it's also biology. It's also bacteria, fungi, protozoa. And what we've been doing is stripping the biology from our soils. And plants can't just grow in rocks. There's a reason why you fertilize all your house plants, right? You're reintroducing nutrients into them. Well, composting is a natural fertilizer. it is nature's way of reintroducing biology into the soil. So it's kind of like a probiotic, like when you've stripped your body of your gut biome because you took antibiotics. That's what we're spraying. We're literally spraying um, fungicide, and herbicides all over our grounds, and it's stripping the nutrients from our soil, it's stripping the biology. Composting is the probiotic that's reintroducing biology in our soil so we can reverse desertification, really heal those sick and dying soils.
You work in this field, in this industry. Do you feel like composting is expanding and growing in this country? And, do you see hope for our soil in the future because of this growing movement?
Absolutely. I mean, this was something everybody used to do. My mom's father composted. There was always just like a pile in the corner where people threw their stuff and it degraded. And really, it just kind of skipped a generation or two and it's coming back now. So it's something that we've practiced for hundreds of years, and it's something we're going to continue to practice for hundreds of years. We just haven't seen it in maybe the generation right behind us. And so it feels so distant. And the agricultural practices that we've been using for a very long time on commercial scales have been devoid of composting. And I think composting is now, that's the key. Small urban farmers, small rural farmers have been using compost for a really long time, but it's getting these commercial scale farms to reintroduce composting is going to be the big turning point in healing our soils and creating those carbon sinks we want, right? Like carbon's bad in the air, but great in the ground. Plants love carbon. And so all we got to do is increase photosynthesis everywhere, right? There should be plants everywhere pulling carbon dioxide out of the air and storing it safely in the ground where it once was before we started drilling.
I love that visual.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The plants are breathing in the carbon dioxide that we cannot breathe in. And so if we just, there was this, oh my God, there was this funny meme going around for a while that was like, Elon Musk is going to give all this money to someone who can, invent something that takes carbon dioxide out of the air. And like, everybody was like, you mean trees? You literally described trees. Or any plant though, really any plant. Every time you have a weed or a wildflower or corn stalk, that is all breathing in carbon dioxide and storing it in the ground where the soil food web can happily eat it.
I love it. I love all this dirty talk. It's great.
Yeah, like let's get scientific. Where are my nerds at?
So have you ever had a dry bath? I have to ask. And do you know what that is?
Okay, what's going on? Am I going to roll around in some dirt?
Maybe. Okay. So I used to work in the beauty industry for a lot of my career. And I've been to a lot of different spas and had a lot of different types of treatments. And I I went and got a dry bath. And I don't think the place is around anymore. It was in Santa Monica, I think. But you basically sit in a giant tub of hot compost, and and it gets hot sometimes, like when you're still, and then sometimes you have to get out of it if you get like a hot spot, and they would bring you little cold compresses to put on your head to keep you cool, and like an ice pack, and you just you sit in the compost. I have to tell you, I felt amazing afterwards.
Yes, you did. Okay, the best story. I'm at a farm, right? Cottonwood Urban Farm. And this guy named Penn who works for LA Compost is there, and he had an injury on his foot. And I arrive, and his foot is just sticking in a compost pile. And he's like, I'm letting the microbes do their thing, man. And I was like, yo, this is even hippie for me, but I'm freaking feeling you right now, dude. I am loving this. It's like the first Santa Monica spot to be like, we're going to just put compost all over you, and you're going to feel amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I am. They also say that when you smell soil, it releases the same hormones that you get when you're breastfeeding as a baby. And so there's this really like coming home feeling when you're gardening and with dirt and with compost and maybe doing a dry bath, like that's intrinsic. I mean we've literally evolved for these sights, these smells, these sounds, these colors, these textures. And so it would make sense that this is like, I know this is hippie, but this is not. This is like a real like ancestral connection to these things that's very calming and peaceful. We didn't evolve to look at um, plastics and to hear cars running. And so it makes sense that there's a disruption, a feeling of unsettledness when we're around that, and there's a feeling of settledness when we're in nature, because it's what we've been hearing for thousands of years.
That's so fascinating about, the impact that the soil can have, just even the smell of it.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I'm gonna look this up. This dry bath.
It's a Japanese tradition, from what I recall from back when I was researching this. So this place in Santa Monica didn't come up with this idea on their own. I think the Japanese get the credit, but I felt relaxed. I felt energized. I felt amazing, and I really want to do it again. I feel this was before kids and everything, so I
Yeah.
feel like now of all times I could really go for that. But I don't know. I'll look around. I don't
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think it's out there anymore.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, like, think of how much you're giving to your kids. It would be nice for Earth to give a little bit back to you right now. You know, someone needs to take care of Mama, and who better
Yes,
than Mama, right?
please.
Than Mama. Yeah.
So I might, if you see me rolling around in some compost at farm days, just,
Yeah. I'm like, that girl gets it. She knows what's what. You know. She knows what's what. Mud bath OG. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your event coming up. Tell us
Yeah.
about it. Tell us everything.
Love it. So, as you kind of hearing me talk, I have a wild respect and appreciation for the type of grounding and connection I feel when I'm in nature. And I understand actually how rare that is for city urban dwellers to really get. We usually have to drive pretty far to get that, but there are these gems of hidden spots, these urban farms throughout the city of LA, throughout every city usually, um, that can provide that experience for you. And so, what we're hosting is with Compostable has hosted this event twice a year for as long as we've existed. And Opus Events is coming in to help us elevate it because in the past, and I'm going to tell you what the event is in a second, but in the past, it used to be running around like, I'm not an event planner. I'm just running around crazy, like stressed out, like. And Belinda came in and she was like, "My dear, um, we're gonna fix this for you. We're gonna organize this day." And so what we have coming up is called Community Farm Day. It's hosted by Compostable and Opus Events, um, and it's really to offer people a chance to connect with one another in real life, to or to connect with themselves. Maybe they, again, I respect the introvert in everybody. Maybe they want to go to a quiet corner and close their eyes and just listen. Maybe they want to nerd out with a fellow gardener there and share tips and tricks. But it's to really expose people to the food system, the waste system, make these things less invisible because right now they are invisible, right? We put something in a can, it goes away. We don't know if there's problems. We don't even know what's happening, right? That's what happened at the recycling system. Like, what's happening to the things that we put in this? Well, you can come see what's happening to the things you're putting in your compostable bin. You can connect with the organizations that are managing those compost piles. You can connect with the organizations that are growing your food or preparing your food or making clothes out of the materials that we grow. And so it's really all about like this exchange between you and nature, exchange between the community and the vendors that are going to be there. Um, and it's not long, it's only 2 hours, and so there's a lot to do in those 2 hours. It's going to be from 12 to 2 on November 6th at Cottonwood Urban Farm.
Amazing. I can't wait. Is it a family-friendly event?
Oh, absolutely. My chosen family is dogs. Unfortunately, dogs cannot come because there's ducks and chickens on the farm, and we want to make sure nothing scares them. That's their home. And so I'm leaving my fur babies at home, but fleshy babies welcome.
Fleshy babies.
Fleshy babies welcome. We'll introduce you to worms and chickens and ducks and rabbits and orchards, and it's just a really beautiful event.
I can't wait. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk fashion a little bit.
Yes, let's do it.
So I know you have some Swap Society gems in your closet that you've accumulated over the years, but I do want to ask, and it doesn't have to be a Swap Society item, but it can be, obviously. But do you have a favorite item in your closet? What is it, and what do you love about it?
It's not a swap item, I will say, but it is still sustainable, kind of. It's my Patagonia overalls that are like olive green. Olive green is my favorite color. And these overalls just look like they were made for me. I'm a very tall person. Usually I cannot wear that kind of stuff, but it's overall weather again, and I'm like so ready for it. I wore them this morning to the beach.
I wore overalls this morning.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Those are like, and then the other thing I wear, all I care about is comfort. That's it. Is this like harem pant jumpsuit that I have? That's my partner calls it the potato sack. I live in it. So those are like my two pieces that I'm like, you're like, really, Mo, again? And I'm like, yes, again. Yeah. But as far as thrifted stuff, all of my jeans are thrifted because I know how bad jeans are to produce. I mean, the water intensity of jeans. So I would say, as much as I can, I try and purchase thrifted jeans. And
That's good.
they're always great. They're always in still great condition. I mean, they're Levi's. There's like no, they're not going anywhere.
Did you hear about the pair found in the mine recently?
No.
So there was this really old pair. I think it's like the oldest pair they've ever discovered. They found it in a mine. It had even wax on them because it was before they had like electrical lanterns and stuff. They would go down there with candles, and they sold at auction for $76,000 to a vintage reseller. I don't know what they're going to do with them. Maybe they're just keeping them because of the history, but yeah, there was like a whole auction for them and stuff.
Oh my God, that's what I'm saying. Like, I get some things like people don't want to thrift. I understand there's some misconceptions, about thrifting. And you probably spend a lot of your time breaking those misconceptions. But most good quality clothes just get better with time. I'm telling you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially denim.
Especially denim. If you come to Community Farm Day, you'll probably see me in my Patagonia overalls. I just will be rocking them, of course.
Overalls make so much sense to wear to a farm. I mean, that's the whole point of them initially, right?
They make sense anywhere. I wore them last night. I wear them too much now that I'm thinking. No, I don't.
This morning I had mine on. I was just taking my kids to school, but it was a cold morning and I just like had a sweater underneath, and I don't know, it just seemed like it made sense. And one of my sons looked at me and said, "Why are you wearing overalls?" And I said, "Because I felt like it."
Why aren't you wearing overalls? Bigger question. And always at Farm Day, we take clothing donations. So it tries to become something bigger. We also take, we will collect e-waste recycling for people and bring them to Homeboy Industries. So you can bring your food scraps, you can bring your clothing, and you can bring your e-waste, and we'll make sure that's all responsibly managed.
I love it. Amazing. That's so good.
Yeah.
Anything inspiring you right now? What, any books or art?
Okay. I've read this book, but I'm telling you, I go back to it all the time. Braiding Sweetgrass. Have you read that yet?
No.
Oh, it's so beautiful. So it's written by Robin Wall Kimmer. And she's an Indigenous woman that's also a poet, that's also a scientist. And so she has a feminine view, she has a poetic view, she has a scientific view, she has an Indigenous view. And it's like somebody wrote my soul in a book, which I think is actually how everybody feels when they're reading it, because she's putting words to things you intrinsically feel inside. And anytime I kind of need a little bump in inspiration, or maybe if I'm feeling like misunderstood by the world and I want to feel like someone gets me, because I'm an elder emo like punk kid, and I'm like, no one gets me, I'm so misunderstood, but I'll read Robin Wall Kilmer, Braiding Sweetgrass, and I'll just be like, oh my gosh, I mean, all of this, yes, like it, one of the biggest takes away from that book that I continue to build in every part of my life is this this concept of reciprocity and the requirement of having reciprocal exchanges in relationships. And so that you are not always just giving to nature, but you also accept the gifts nature gives to you, and then you give it back, but also in friendships. And so, like, again, part of Compostable, part of Farm Day is all about, like, it's an exchange, right? Attendees are sharing with vendors, vendors are sharing with attendees, members are sharing with Compostable sharing with members. And I'm sure the same for Swap Society. Usually any kind of sustainable oriented business is naturally doing this, but to have words and have it be so validated in such a beautiful way is really nice.
I can't wait to read it. The title sounds familiar, but I haven't gotten all of this information, so I'm so excited. That'll be the next thing I read for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sure you're going to have people who are listening that have read it, and they're going to be like, oh my God, they're going to just like blow up telling you, yes, you must read it. I guarantee not one person's going to be like, no, it was awful. Like no one, that's not how anybody responds to that book. It's beautiful.
The climate anxiety just seems to grow for me anyway. And there's all of this recent news as well. The even more recent UN coalition that's saying, oh, we're totally missing our targets. And, I read these things and I can't help but feel tense. I'm clenching my jaw. I'm like stressed. Mm-hmm. It's permeating me. I know that it is. How about you? What's making you feel optimistic about the future?
Yeah, I'm and I speak very candidly about my mental health with anybody. I'm no stranger to anxiety and depression. Like, this is something I've struggled with for a long time, and I have a lot of coping skills around that. And I think, now more and more people are experiencing that with the climate crisis that's happening. And these like old, anxious, depressed people are coming in like, don't worry, we got you. Okay. We will help you get through this. Like, we are pros. And so, for someone who's lived with this as my reality for so long, and someone who's a bit punk rock, there's just like, what am I going to do? I'm going to fight. Like, there's nothing else I can do other than fight. Because if I wasn't going to fight, whether it's the depression I experience, or the climate anxiety experience, or the general anxiety experience, I would just be immobile, and for me, that is not an option. I can't spend my whole life immobile, and so I have to cope with it somehow. And the way I cope with it is through action, through gentle action with a purpose. And so I forgive myself for the inactions I take, and then praise myself for the actions I take. Composting is a huge, huge, impactful action you can take that's very accessible. It's like a 20-for-1 deal. And so every time I'm composting, it's a little bit of an antidote to climate anxiety. Every time I engage with someone and they share something with me and I learn something new, it's a little bit of an antidote to climate anxiety. Every time I pull on my thrifted jeans, it's a little bit of an antidote. And every time I use a coffee cup that was, virgin material, I say, it's okay. You're doing the best you can, and don't let that like completely weigh me down, and do as much as I can in a little bit of time that I have. And so I just remind myself there's no other option than to like throw your middle fingers in the air and fight, and work towards it every day, little by little, gentle by gentle. But that's been a really long journey for me, because I used to get stressed out every time somebody sipped from a water bottle. It just like plagued me. And I was just like, you know what? Everybody's trying their best. The world is a very overwhelming place. And, I'm going to continue doing 20 times extra than maybe somebody else is doing. Cause, two negative behaviors don't make a right behavior, right? Like, so if someone's drinking from a water bottle every day, that does not excuse me from drinking from a water bottle every day. That's never going to make a change. So I just do my own thing. I try not to let moral licensing get in the way of my behaviors.
That's great advice. And I've felt similarly as you have in situations where you see something happening that's just so egregious and feels so unnecessary. At the same time, you just have to make your own choices and lead by example. And I rarely buy bottled water, but we were in Mexico recently and that's all we could do was buy bottled water. And it was such a funny moment because it had been so long since I had even, it's like, cause I kind of like, I have that reaction too.
Right?
It's like,
the way I foster dogs, right? And so I was watching these huskies the other day. They're fosters, and I'm walking them, and I'm like getting two types of stares, right? I'm getting the people who think the huskies are beautiful, and the people who are like, "How dare you have huskies in LA?" You know what I mean? And I'm like, they don't know my story. They don't know that I'm fostering them, and that's how I feel every time I see somebody doing something that's not climate perfect. I'm like, if I am the person walking by, like, how dare you? Like, who knows what they're doing? Maybe they're immune compromised right now, and COVID's been really stressful I don't know. All I can do is have little moments of education and little moments of like, when someone stops being like, oh, I'm fostering these dogs. They were in a hoarding situation. They're now out, and like just little moments of like letting people know there's like lots of different situations, and lots of different reasons people are doing certain behaviors.
absolutely. And I think that, I know that I'm sometimes like, I know we're specifically talking about water bottles, but you could use this in other circumstances as well. But, we bring our reusable water bottles with us everywhere we go, but sometimes you're at a place and you run out and they don't have refills or you forget your bottle or whatever it might be. And it's like, I think that if those are the times that you're getting that single use bottle of water, that's more ideal than just like making a habit of it and buying a case of it and keeping it in the kitchen. And then that's how you're always drinking your water or whatever. And there are also those kind of, polar opposite situations where I think, I'm trying to be more gentle with myself as well. But I still have that little checklist in the back where it's like, oh, I remember those recent times where I had to buy bottled water. Like I just felt that comment because it's like,
And
I need to let
I think
it go.
It's a very, very triggering comment for sustainability. People are like, I did buy bottled water. It's like, I know, it's okay. It's okay. What are the like 30 other things you did that were really good?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what I mean? It's okay. Like, so, the problem isn't use. The problem is overconsumption. There is systems in place to handle some use. We just all have to do a little bit less. And offering opportunities for people to do less so they can see less is possible. So for instance, at this upcoming farm day, there's a tip on there that says like, be green and bring your own plates and utensils and bottles. Like if you can remember it, like, so just offering a prompt sometimes is like we will have compostable products there for people who forget, but I just want to remind people that you can absolutely bring your own stuff to this event and reuse it. And then it models that behavior and like, oh yeah, why didn't I think that I could actually do that? Like everything doesn't need, and as an event planner, I'm like, I don't need to provide everything for people. Like I can have a backup option, but like it doesn't make me a bad event planner to encourage people to bring their own stuff. It makes me a responsible event planner. And so like just changing our perception of these things too.
So how can people find you?
On Instagram, we're at compostable.la. Compostablela.com is our website. You can come track me down in Mar Vista. Please don't do it in a creepy way. Or you can come meet me at Farm Day, which will be, again, Sunday, November 6th from 12 to 2 at Cottonwood Urban Farm.
Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to see you in person and come to Farm
Yay.
Day. And thank you so much for chatting with us, telling
it.
us all your stuff. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so much for inviting me on. I love it.
Thank you for listening to the Swap Society podcast. Swap Society is an online clothing swap for women and kids that makes it easy and affordable to mix up your wardrobe sustainably. We're a growing community of women across the USA who are creating positive change by swapping our clothes and slowing down our fashion consumption. We would love to swap with you. If you're interested in joining, you can sign up at our website. Learn more at www.swapsociety.co. That's swapsociety.co. You can find the show notes for each episode on our website. Please get in touch with us on social media too. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for the video version of this podcast at Swap Society. Music is by Joel Korolitz and yours truly. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Please help us spread the word by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, sharing on social media, or simply telling a friend. We really appreciate your support. Have a wonderful day, and remember to swap before you shop.